As with all Harley accessories to this point, they do come with these instructions, but the good thing is we won't be using those because they're garbage, like all of them. But the lighting kit came in the mail this week. Very excited. We're going to, comes nicely packed, which is great. Take a look at some of the pieces here. Of course, comes with the housings, and they're all wired up. The hardware, the brackets. The nice thing about this kit is it comes with all the wiring needed to add the switch, which is the only reason I didn't look at going into aftermarket. I like the OEM look of having the switch integrated into the bike rather than adding a toggle or something different. So that's why I went with the factory setup. It's very expensive. I believe it was $435. If you look online, there's a couple dealers that sell online at a discount, but very expensive. But I'm very excited. Been saving for a while to get this kit. Alright, so here's everything all laid out. Here's all the parts that you get. You get a hardware kit. It actually turns out that it does come with the turn signals, so that was something that I read. You had to switch out your existing turn signal housings, but apparently it comes with them. So that's good to know. Here's the switch, which will be nice because this will go right into the bike. It'll have a factory look, and it's exactly what we're looking for, so that'll be nice. Our housings, and then we've got some covers that go over the light bulbs and the brackets. Remember, these don't come with the bulbs. I highly recommend you take a look at what's available on Amazon, as I did, and I purchased some aftermarket Amazon special. It looked just like the Daymaker style. I'll show those later. That I spent about $40 compared to $400 through Harley. So more on that later. Let's go ahead and start getting this put together. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of our parts here and we're going to assemble the light housing here. So you take your bracket, and it's this first one closest to the front of the bike, and I'm going to take this rubber, it's called an isolator, and slide that through. It's just to help with vibration, I'm sure. Slide it through the threads, and then slide your wiring down underneath. Next we'll take it's called a clamp block, a lock washer, and your locking nut. And then keep pulling that wiring through. This doesn't have to be perfect yet, but go ahead and just get the threads started so that it's somewhat in place. Okay, that's step one. So now that we have gotten this thing secure, I want it just tight enough that it's not going to move around, but with a little bit of force we can twist it so we can angle it once it's on the bike. So we had to use, I used a spark plug socket. It's a 9/16, because you need to be able to get the wires all the way through the opening here. I'll show you. So you got to be able to get the wiring through for this to get to the nut and be able to have this one has a 17. We can grab right with our wrench to tighten this down. So that's a tip on how to get this done. And then once we've got this in, I'll show you. There is a cavity in here. Let's see here. Get this to show up on the camera. See this cavity in here. That cavity is where these wires are going to feed through, and then of course they'll feed out through the other side. There's also going to be a similar cavity for the turn signal down here at the bottom, so both of those will feed out through our open cavity on the main bracket. Okay, so next we've got a We've got a SX bolt, we've got a locking washer, and the standoff or for the turn signal and the turn signal housing. So this is what's all going to be assembled next. And this is all just going to assemble. So we've got our locking washer here. This is going to come from on top. And then it's just a simple attachment here. Make sure you feed your wiring through, and that will all secure in place. Feed your wiring through, and then all the way in, and then tighten that bolt down. So on this next one, we're going to hook up 4 of the 5 wires. We've got a blue, a violet, a black, a gray and black, and then we've got a standard black without a connector on the end. Included in the kit is there's 2 of these connectors, one for each side. Now it's going to be really hard to see on the camera, but there is, let's see if I can get this to auto zoom here. It's hard to see here, but these are labeled from left to right, the way this is facing you, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It is there. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the order that these will go in. So we'll connect the blue to 1, violet to 2, black to 3, gray black to 4. Then this becomes a connector that we'll actually plug into the bike, which will be for the turn signal and for the auxiliary light. So these 2 black wires, there is one step we got to take before we can plug these in to our connector, is we have to take these 2 black, one of them slides into the connector and one of them is a blank. This blank one, you're just going to take off the end and stick one end into this connector. The thing is, you've got to cut this one in half, and you'll have the blank and the initial half of this one sliding into the connector, and then you'll reconnect the other half of this on the other side. So it'll be 2 wires on one side and the other half of the cut one on the other side. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. It is very tight, so you have to be very careful where you cut this. Basically, get as far down this way, far over here as you can get, and still be able to fit the wire into this connector. So you can see the mess that we've made here, but that all the wires are going in now. Blue, purple, black, white, black, but this one is connected on the other side with 2 black wires. I know it's hard to tell, but we got both of them in on this side. Let's just see if we can get it in there. So that's what it should look like when it's done. I'm going to wrap this up in some electrical tape just for additional security, but that should be it, and it should be ready to plug in. Okay, so before you do any work, you're going to want to remove the main fuse, and it is on the left side here, this 50 amp fuse. We're just going to pull this fuse. Now we've killed all the electrical system. Since we're going to be messing with the electrical system, it's much safer to go ahead and just kill the power. When I take off the 2 acorn nuts, remove the bracket for the turn signal. That's what we're going to be replacing. So I'll start taking that apart. Alright, so now that we've moved the 2 acorn nuts, I'm going to carefully pull this off. You can see the connector right there, so we're just going to disconnect that, and that's what we're going to plug right back into. Okay, so now I've removed the acorns and the studs from both sides, and the next thing we need to do is take out this collar, and to do that you just pull and almost like pivot it towards down and around the front. There's a little lip here. You can see a couple of lips that we've got to clear, and then this thing will come right. Okay. Alright, so then we want to take off this next panel, which houses the switches here and on the side. Both sides, there's a 5/32 Allen here. That's 5/32, one on both sides. Once we take it off, this will be loose, and then the last thing we'll have to do is remove the ignition switch, which I will show you how to do now. Alright, so to get this ignition off, it's not a very complicated process, but you have to follow it a specific way, otherwise you could mess this up. So you're going to take the ignition and turn it all the way to this side, and underneath there's a little tab, you can feel it. And so what you got to do is get your keys, stick your key in, and then push that tab. At the same time, you're going to turn your key to the left, counterclockwise, while you're pushing that tab in, and then the whole thing will come out. Be careful, don't lose that spring. Take it out. Just remember the orientation. You just pulled all that out. So here we can see down in here very clearly. You can see this is the plug for the 3 dummy switches. Alright, so now that we have this removed from the bike, it's these switches over here that we're concerned about. So we flip it over. Looks like 2 heads. So once both these bolts have been removed, we can pull the dummy switch out, and we are going to install the new switch. So let's. Okay, there we go. So now we've got a switch. Okay, now we're just going to come back through and reinstall. Okay, so this side, just FYI, this plugs in 90 degrees counterclockwise to what it was set up when we unplugged it. So just FYI. Okay, and then we can just start putting everything back together. We can put the 2 bolts in, put the ignition in, and that should be it. So now we have everything reassembled and put back together, so we can go ahead and plug this in just like the original setup. No changes there. Feed the wires through, and then mount. Pretty straightforward. Put the acorn nuts on. Okay. So now all we got to do is tighten these acorn nuts, and they're mounted. Alright, so we've got this mounted. I already switched out the turn signal bulb and the cover. That was not included in this kit. So that's all set up, ready to go. I also pre-checked that everything was working, put the fuse back in, plugged everything, and turned the ignition on, and everything worked great. So I'm going to do the other side and then plug in the lamps, and we'll take a look at how it Alright, well, here's the finished product. I think it looks pretty awesome. Really finishes out the look that I was going for. All blacked out like this. Yeah, this looks great. Let me go turn the key on. Yeah, that is quite a bit of light coming out.